Soul Reaper. Their bodies are draped in a black kimono called a shihakusho, and they carry a sword called a zanpakuto. Belonging to an organization called the 13 Court Guard Squads that exists in the world after death known as the Soul Society. In their role as balancers, they guide wayward spirits known as pluses to the Soul Society, sublimate beings known as hollows that devour souls and indiscriminately attack both the dead and the living, and maintain the amount of kompaku between the Soul Society and the world of the living to preserve an equal balance. Their personalities or powers may differ, but they share the same four fundamental fighting practices of Zanjutsu, Hakuda, Hoho, and Kido, collectively known as Zankensogi. Generally, humans are unable to see them unless they have a high level of spiritual awareness. Arankar. A hollow that has removed its mask and gained the power of a Soul Reaper. Their population has had a sudden spike thanks to the Hogyoku, with their physical appearances reaching a completed adult-like state. The greater their powers were as a hollow, the higher grade their combat abilities will become, as well as how human-like they'll appear. With cracked masks, they are draped in a white shihakusho and wield zanpakuto. An Arankar zanpakuto is the core of that Arankar's own abilities sealed in the shape of a sword, and by using their equivalent to a Soul Reaper's bankai, a resurrection, they can release their true abilities in form. In addition to their high spiritual pressure hardness, Iero, they have a high-speed movement ability called Sonido that can match Flash Step and Hirinkyaku, and can also use Seros. Typically, they lose the super-fast regeneration ability they had from when they were hollows. Huecomundo. A space haunted by hollows that exists in the interval between the Soul Society and the world of the living. It can only be entered through a garganta. It's always night, and the moon's phases are an inverse of the world of the livings. The surface is covered in what seems to be white sand, and is dotted with withered trees made from a quartz-like substance. There is no water. The concentration of reishi in the atmosphere is denser than that of the Soul Society or the world of the living, so a typical hollow can obtain enough sustenance by simply breathing. Sosuke Aizen and his subordinates once inhabited Las Noches to rule Huecomundo, but since Aizen's departure and the deaths of Baragon and Stark, Tyr Haribel has become the acting ruler. Bankai. The second stage of a zanpakuto's release, as opposed to the first stage called Shikai. It generally increases your combat power by 5 to 10 times. Unlike how Shikai can be attained by communicating and aligning with your zanpakuto, in order to reach Bankai, you must materialize your zanpakuto avatar, and then make that avatar yield. Bankai manifest by crying out your zanpakuto's true name, and they often transform to have more diverse shapes and abilities than a Shikai would. Because maintaining a Bankai state demands an enormous amount of spirit energy, they can be difficult to maintain for a long period of time, even for a captain of the 13 Court Guard Squads. And generally, once a Bankai's been damaged, it can't be repaired. With the exception of Squad 11, mastering Bankai is a condition to becoming a captain of the 13 Court Guard Squads. Quincy. A group with high spirit energy whose goal is to completely eradicate the hollows that harm humans. It was thought that there were only a few survivors, such as Uryu Ishida, left. However, a group of Quincy calling themselves the Vandenreich carried out a declaration of war on the Soul Society. Bundled in a white military uniform, they have a wide array of abilities, such as firing arrows of concentrated reishi known as Heilig File, employing an advanced way of walking called Hirinkyaku, and either raising their offensive abilities by flowing reishi through their blood with Blut Arteria, or strengthening their bodies with the second kind of blood armor called Blut Vena to raise their defensive abilities. For over 1,000 years, they've been at odds with the Soul Reapers, whose role it is to maintain the balance of Kompaku and to send purified hollows to the Soul Society, and had their majority wiped out by the Soul Reapers 200 years ago. All Quincy's descend from their progenitor Yuhavach, and they note the distinction between pure-blooded ex-Quincy's and mixed-blooded gemished Quincy's. Sternritter. They are an elite unit of Quincy's within the Vandenreich, among which are members that have been bestowed unique abilities called Schrifts by Yuhavach, and possess enough fighting power to overwhelm the captains of the 13 Court Guard Squads. They set out to invade the Soul Society, equipped with medallions that can steal a Soul Reaper's bankai. Some use reishi weapons shaped like guns or swords that may not appear to be bows and arrows at first glance, and there are some that can even use Quincy Volstandish, an enhanced form that exceeds imagination. They lost to the 13 Court Guard Squads in the war 1,000 years ago, and can now only move about outside of their reishi space known as the Schattenbereich for a limited period of time. 13 Court Guard Squads. An organization established by Shigekuni Genryu Yamamoto with the purpose of defending the Seirei and the Soul Society, as well as guarding the Konpaku of the world of the living. It is comprised of 13 squads, with the squad 1 captain and head captain holding top authority at its core, and all other ranks essentially determined by combat ability. The official stance of the Central 46 is that the 13 Court Guard Squads is a noble organization, and there's a strict policy stating that one is not allowed to withdraw of their own volition. The ideals and attitude of each squad is determined by their captain, so it can vary greatly from squad to squad. Each squad is symbolized by their own flower, which is engraved on the badge of every lieutenant and on every barrack within the Seirei. They also have strong ties to other organizations such as the Kido Corps, the Stealth Force, and the Department of Research and Development that's affiliated with Squad 12. In most cases, it is a captain that's also serving as the head of that organization. It's generally those who graduate from the Spirit Academy that enlist, at which point either transfer to another squad or promotion becomes possible. Garganta, a hole that connects the world of the living and Hueco Mundo. They're usually closed, but hollows and Iran cars open them when traveling between the world of the living and Hueco Mundo. There are no paths inside, just eddies of turbulent reishi, so travelers must solidify reishi as footholds as they pass through it. After receiving instructions from the Soul Society while they prepared for the battle against Aizen, Kisuke Urahara was able to open, adjust, and stabilize one with a technique he put into operation by chanting, "In my right hand, the stone that connects the worlds. In my left hand, the blade that binds existence. The black-haired shepherd, the chair of the noose. I strike the ibis when the clouds gather." And Mayuri Kurotsuchi, after using Zayalapuro's research in Hueco Mundo to analyze the structure of the Garganta, was able to develop a device that could open a Garganta with greater accuracy. It's possible for them to connect the Soul Society and Hueco Mundo. Genzi Juku, a private school opened by Shigekuni Yamamoto, the founder of the Genryu style. In those days, Shigekuni Yamamoto was known as Eijisai due to the scar on his forehead in the shape of the A character, and his name spread throughout the Soul Society with each military accomplishment he achieved. Shigekuni Yamamoto served as the head teacher of Genzi Juku, guiding young students, and is thought that his experience is what led him to forming the Soul Reaper Academy, now known as the Shino Spirit Academy, an educational institute to cultivate and train Soul Reapers. Soul Reaper and Quincy. Soul Reapers purify hollows and send them to the Soul Society, while Quincy's extinguish them completely. In order to maintain the balance of Konpaku, the Soul Reapers have attempted negotiations with the Quincy's many times and have been consistently rejected, with things sometimes even devolving into combat. 1,000 years ago, Yu Habak led the Sternritter in an invasion of the Soul Society, but they were defeated by the 13 Court Guard squads that Shigekuni Yamamoto had founded, and with his closest soldiers defeated, Yu Habak had no choice but to retreat into the realm of shadows to hide. Then 200 years ago, after much deliberation, the Soul Society carried out an operation to exterminate the Quincy's. This led to their downfall, with supposedly only a few survivors remaining. Zankanotachi, the true name of Shigekuni Genryu Yamamoto's Ryujin Jaka, the oldest and strongest flame and heat type Zanpakuto. In Bankai, the blade starts to look like it's been burnt to charcoal, and its influence becomes so pronounced that all the moisture in the Soul Society disappears. It's so powerful that both the user and the Soul Society itself could be destroyed if the sword is kept in Bankai for too long. And its true worth becomes clear when it uses its 4 techniques, each with its own form and name that reflects one of the 4 directions. Its heat reaches 15 million degrees, and it burns away anything it touches without leaving a trace. When using West Sanjutsu Gokui, its flames, believed to be a visualization of Shigekuni Genryu Yamamoto's overwhelming spiritual pressure, become visible, while South Kakajumano Koshi Daisojin heats the ashes of those slain in the past, temporarily reviving the dead with its power. Blute. Quincy's can increase both their offensive and defensive abilities by flowing reishi directly through their veins. The more power the Quincy who activates it has, the more fortified their body will become, even becoming equal to a Soul Reaper that's in Bankai. The 2 types of Blute are Blute Arteria, which is useful for offense, and Blute Vena, which is useful for defense. But since they both use their own independent reishi system within the body, they can't both be employed simultaneously. Pure Quincy's possesses power from birth, but even the Quincy's that are not can acquire the skill through training. 13 Court Guard Squads. A Soul Reaper organization founded by Shigekuni Genryusai Yamamoto. The current 13 Court Guard Squads isn't as brutal as when it was first formed, as it was then comprised of heinous criminals from all over. As a gang of rowdy killers who used anything to their advantage if it meant getting their kill, there was not true conviction in fighting with pride to guard the citizenry, and thus they were guard squads in name only. It is due to this terrifying combat power of theirs that the Quincy army they fought with 1,000 years ago was wiped out and forced to retreat. Destroyed Bankai. If a Zanpakuto is destroyed while in Shikai state, it can be repaired in time if the owner pours their spirit and spiritual pressure into it. However, the significance of it being destroyed while in Bankai state is different, as the Bankai can never return to how it was again. Examples of Bankai that have been destroyed in the past include Ikaku Madarame's Ryomon Hozukimaru and Renji Abarai's Hihio Zabimaru. The former was destroyed in battle against the Arankar Edrad Leones, and while its shape has currently been restored, it can no longer exhibit its original strength. And the latter had a portion of his blade joints destroyed in battle against Byakuya Kuchiki, and has remained in a damaged state ever since. The one single exception confirmed thus far is Sajin Kumamura's Kokujo Tengen Myo. There's an extreme connection between the owner and the Zanpakuto, and while the downside to that is that Kumamura himself will get injured whenever Myo gets destroyed, the Zanpakuto will also be repaired when Kumamura is healed of his wounds. Squad Zero. The Soul Society's most powerful military group tasked with the protection of the Ryo and the Ryo-Q. It is composed of 5 members, all of whom uniquely share the role of a captain, and their combined strength is said to surpass that of the 13 Court Guard Squads. They usually remain stationed at the Ryo-Q, and their power is essential to gaining access to the Ryo-Q. You must meet certain criteria to join Squad Zero, and only those who meet those criteria in the Soul Society and get recognized by the Ryo may join. Drawn on the flag they were holding up was their squad's flower, the Winter Daphne. Gatonden. The palace of Squad Zero's Grain King, Kiryu Hikifune, could be called a veritable castle of food. 3 large pagodas are connected from within, and curtains separate the central dining room from a multi-tiered kitchen spewing flames, and a cold room furnished with a large wooden ice maker. The concept of Gikon was manufactured by Hikifune's ritual, which involves taking a totally different spiritual pressure into one's body simply through eating, elevating their power level by allowing a spiritual pressure from another dimension to dwell within their body. By the way, her cooking is perfect in regards to taste, texture, and aroma, but she'll occasionally mix in ingredients that are so gross you'll want to stop eating. Furthermore, by the time Hikifune gets to finishing up the dessert, her body will have changed shape drastically due to her using up all of her spiritual pressure while cooking. Kirinden. The palace of Squad Zero's hot spring demon, Tenjiro Kirinji. There's a huge bathhouse in the middle of the town, and the hot spring therapy performed there is Kirinji's ritual. By taking turns bathing in the white bone hell that removes blood and damaged spiritual pressure, and the blood pond hell which supplies new blood and spiritual pressure, all the blood and spiritual pressure within the body gets completely replaced, leading to the body recovering at extraordinary speeds. If someone whose original spiritual pressure isn't that strong bathes in them, they need to wear a protective bathing robe made from super reishi to prevent their body from eroding and rupturing due to over-recovery. You must also always place a special towel on your head while in the white bone hell, otherwise your life will be lost due to the core of your spiritual pressure slipping out. The secret playground that Kisuke Urahara and Yoruichi Shihoin built deep underneath Sokyoku Hill has a hot spring that can speed up recovery, modeled after the hot springs in the Kirinden. Hooden, the palace of Oetsu Nemaya of Squad Zero, recognized as part of the very history of the Soul Society as the creator of Zanpakuto. As the blade god, Oetsu Nemaya forged all the nameless Zanpakuto, the Asauchi, that can be considered the origin of all Zanpakuto. Once you pass under the extravagantly gaudy and gleaming banner and enter its bussin' interior, you'll find yourself swarmed with a crowd of sizzling shawties to welcome you in. Galaxy Hooden is truly a paradise. The actual main hall of the Hooden is the decrepit shack perched at the edge of the cliff. Kenpachi. The title of Kenpachi has been passed down to the strongest for over 1,000 years. The name is known throughout not only the Seirei, but the Soul Society as a whole, and holds enough weight to sometimes even repel orders from Central 46. They're always seeking someone stronger than them to fight, and continue to grow in strength through battle to overwhelm, or sometimes attract, friend and foe alike. There is only one Kenpachi per era. The title is given to those who live and love to fight, and to earn this title that's been passed down across the generations through duels, you need only strength. Your past or status don't matter. It has become custom for the captain of Squad 11 of the 13 Court Guard squads to be the Kenpachi title holder, as many of its members are strong, hot-blooded men who are always seeking a battle. Masaki Kurosaki, Ichigo's biological mother. Kind, cheerful, and with a big heart, she was like the sun and the heart of the Kurosakis, loved dearly by everyone in the family. 9 years ago on June 17th, during a heavy rain, she lost her life while protecting Ichigo from a hollow named Grand Fisher. Ichigo blamed himself for his family losing their mother, and so he resolved to live his life protecting his family himself. After becoming a substitute Soul Reaper, Ichigo came face to face with Grand Fisher once more, but he let him get away, and that caused his guilt to intensify. But after a talk from his father Ishin, he decided to live his life in a way that wouldn't dishonor the feelings of Misaki after she sacrificed her life to protect him. Much later, Grand Fisher became an Arankar, and got taken out by Ishin with a single slash. By the by, the Kurosaki family has a huge portrait of Misaki in their living room that reaches to the ceiling, and has Misaki Forever written on it. And every year on June 17th, the entire family visits her grave. Misaki still lives on within her family's hearts. Unagiya, a convenience store run by Ikumi Unagiya. Because the store's name is taken from her last name, people mistake it for an eel restaurant, and she frequently receives phone calls for orders. Ikumi is strong in body and in mind, and she runs Unagiya while raising her son Kaoru. There are no employees, and Ichigo only works there part-time. Because Ichigo frequently doesn't show up, Ikumi sometimes goes to his school to drag him to work. But their relationship isn't bad, with Ikumi acting as a sort of older sister to Ichigo, watching over him like a guardian, sometimes gently and sometimes strictly. Ishida family, a family of pure-blooded Quincy's, a rarity among Quincy survivors. To protect the Quincy purity of the Ishida family, Ryukin's mother, Izumi Ishida, welcomed in Misaki as she was the lone member of the Kurosaki family, another pure-blooded Quincy household. However, due to a battle with White, Misaki was contaminated by a hollow's Kenpaku, and pure-blooded Quincy's came to an end with Ryukin Ishida. Afterwards, Ryukin married Kanai Katagiri, a mixed-blooded Quincy, who served the Ishidas, and their son Uri was born. But the already frail Kanai ended up losing her life as a result of Yuhabak's Auswählen. Currently, the only members of the Ishida family are Ryukin and Uryu, and their relationship is not what one would consider great. Quincy and Hollow. Quincy's have strong Kenpaku, thus making them ideal prey for Hollows, who primarily consume Kenpaku. In order to combat the Hollows, the Quincy's honed their powers to become a clan that specialized in anti-Hollow combat. Because they believe in fighting to avenge their comrades, they insisted on completely destroying Hollows for hurting and killing their loved ones, as opposed to purifying them and sending them to the Soul Society as the Soul Reapers do. This conduct would ultimately end up upsetting the balance of Kenpaku between the world of the living and the Soul Society, and though the Soul Reapers advised them to leave the Hollows to the Soul Reapers, their words fell on deaf ears, and the Soul Reapers decided that they were a threat to the world that needed to be exterminated. Zangetsu, the Quincy power inside of Ichigo. Ichigo inherited it from his Quincy mother Misaki, and it became a part of Ichigo's power. He's watched over Ichigo's development, harboring strong desires to protect him, and has occasionally acted strictly in order to guide Ichigo, sometimes even borrowing the power of a hollow to help teach Ichigo how to use his Zanpakuto. When teaching the final Getsuga Tensho, the two of them became a single embodiment of power to confront Ichigo, and even though what he wanted to protect and what Ichigo wanted to protect differed and gave him conflicting feelings, he helped Ichigo's evolution. Zangetsu, the hollow power inside of Ichigo. It's a fusion of the Soul Reaper powers that Ichigo's father Ishin possessed, and the power of the modified Hollow White that joined with his mother Misaki's Kenpaku. When he appears in the spiritual world, he appears identical to Ichigo but with inverted colors, and acts aggressively with high combat abilities. He manifests via holification during intense battles when Ichigo is truly on the verge of losing his life or can't handle his Zanpakuto's power, and ends up saving him. When they confronted each other during the final Getsuga Tensho training, he appeared in the complete holification form that occurs when Ichigo's mind is suppressed by his own destructive impulses.